All right, so today we are joined by Dr. Ken Majer. So Ken and I had a chance to meet up a couple years ago at a workshop that Ken did. Man, it was absolutely fascinating. So I'm really honored to have Ken, to have him on this program to share some of his insights with us. But Ken is the author of 4 different books on core values, leadership, a lot of different awesome topics that are totally relevant to building strong corporate cultures. But his work enables business leaders to build powerful and practical corporate cultures based upon the foundations of shared core values. And we talk a lot about core values, among other topics, in this curriculum that we're sharing. But Ken, thank you so much for joining us from California. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So Ken, if you wouldn't mind, I would love for you to just kind of share a little bit about kind of your background, but then how did you get into this world of core values or of values? And so I know that you've started your career as a professor, and then you were in academia for a certain period of time, doing a lot of consulting, and then you decided to make the shift and go purely into consulting and coaching. But it seems that core values is such a niche. How did you land into core values or into values-based leadership?
Well, it's maybe the best way to think about it is that people are driven by their personal values, and companies are run by a set of values, whether they're stated or not. And you can't open the newspaper, turn on the news today without somebody saying our American values or the values of this particular person are inconsistent with my values. And so everybody more and more in the last, I'd say 10 years, but mostly in the last 2 or 3, values are talked about every day. And I think about, maybe 10 years ago, I started to believe and understand how values impact not only individual behavior, but also corporate behavior. And so I started focusing more and more in that arena. So that's kind of the background of it. Maybe one fun way of thinking about this is I'll refer you to an article written by David Belden, a colleague of mine in Washington, D.C. And he wrote an article called The Mindful Leader. And in that article, he talks about the Eastern philosophy and how that impacts or can impact on American companies. He talks about karma, and karma, as we all know, it's those things that happen you have no control over. It's just karma. And then there's dharma, and dharma is your personal focus in life, your personal acceptance. That's dharma. And then the third concept is sangha, S-A-N-G-A. And this is where a community of people come together and have the same behaviors and values, and that leads to what he refers to as harmony. And harmony being an important value for an organization, because if it's a harmonious atmosphere, then people are all pulling the oars in the same direction, and they're all focused on the same goals. And harmony then can lead to more profitability because you have happier people, good people stick around. And so that's kind of maybe a good foundation. The way I'm thinking about values and harmony right now is that it becomes something that gives you an opportunity to lay a foundation in a company so that people will work harmoniously together and therefore gain the benefits of it.
So Dr. Majer, values, we hear, like you said, we hear the word values a lot, but what does values mean for companies? And why is it important for leaders to really be tuned in to what their values are and really even try to determine what the values need to be and kind of take groups along that journey to get values that are more productive where you become harmonious?
Let's start with what are values? And that's the question that I ask. You don't wake up in the morning and say, what are my values? I mean, you just they're always just like air. You don't think about air, but you have to have it to survive and to live. But values are those fundamental principles that we believe in that determine our behavior, okay? How we act, what we do. And by the way, this is not a new concept. Aristotle said, I am what I repeatedly do. I am what I do. Well, if values drive what you do, and Aristotle said that I am what I do, then it's not a big leap to say, I am my values. And so if you're a person who is honest, you do honest things. If you're a person who is greedy, you do greedy things. The value drives your behavior or your actions. That's on the individual basis. Well, when you get into a company, the way a company does business is also based upon the values. If you've got a company where inadvertently or directly you teach people the process of integrity and the values for what they're trying to do, then the company is a company based upon the foundation of integrity and some other values as well. Southwest Airlines is a great example. Southwest Airlines, one of the core values at Southwest Airlines is it's fun. And we've all been on Southwest Airlines when people do fun, goofy things. I was on a Southwest Airlines flight, and during takeoff, one of the flight attendants was throwing peanut bags down the aisle, and the plane was going like this, and people are grabbing peanut bags. Just goofy, fun stuff. Other companies that you know about, if I ask you what's one of the core values of Nordstrom, you would tell me
high quality.
Yeah,
customer service.
Customer service, absolutely. And I have stories about customer service in Nordstrom that I can tell you about. The point is, the values drive the way the organization runs. And customer service at Nordstrom is a great example. Another one would be Zappos. I ask, what's Zappos all about? And people say shoes. Yeah, joke. Okay, shoes was in the beginning, and now you can get anything through Zappos. And their value there is also about customer service. If somebody, they're trained, if somebody calls in and they don't have the product that the person wants, they send them to a competitor because it's by word of mouth. You don't see Zappos advertised a lot. And they went from zero revenue, I believe, in first year to something like $1 billion in year 9. They beat the record of, or their personal goal of 10 years. Point is, the values drive the behaviors in the organization. Now, if that's the case, how are you going to pick people who will come into your organization? You want to pick them on their skill set. Well, that's fine, except skills can be taught. People are really smart, and you can teach people skills. But do they fit into the organization? Because their values are compatible. And if the values are compatible with the behaviors and the expected behaviors in the organization, then you can get a harmonious atmosphere. And that's kind of what you're looking for, as I mentioned earlier in the introduction.
So, Dr. Majer, we talk a lot about core values. What's that?
Ken is fine. You don't have to call me doctor.
We talk a lot about core values. So what is, so we have our values, and then we have core values. What is the difference there? What is a core value?
Well, when in the process that I use to develop values for a company, we generate a whole bunch of values that are personal, come from the people in the organization. And I think that's critical. If you're going to have a set of values that are going to drive the behaviors in the organization, they have to come from everybody. It's not just from the top. It's not just from top down. It's rather bottom up and top down. So we generate maybe 50, 60, 70 values. And then we do a little multi-voting and start saying, well, which ones are most important for how we drive our company? And we whittle it down to hopefully 5, sometimes 6, never more than that because people can't remember. So 5 or 6 core values. And then the second step in the process that I use is to define those core values. And that's because core values let's say, again, the example of integrity. Integrity for a doors and windows construction company might be different than integrity for a high-tech Silicon Valley company. So you define these values for your specific company. And in doing that, you can help by using all those other words, those other values that you generated to help make good, strong, robust definitions of the values. So you don't lose any of that power of those other values. You kind of incorporate them into the definitions.
So it seems that having values of, like you said, integrity and being innovative and being adaptive and all of these things, it'd probably be pretty easy to convince folks that, yeah, those are values that you need to have in a successful company. I'm interested in having you talk about, is there such thing as the certain values that every company should have, or just because companies have different values, does that mean one's right and one's wrong?
No, that's a good question. No, I do not believe all companies should have a certain set of values. It really is up to the people in the organization. However, given that, words like integrity and honesty and joyfulness or whatever, some of them kind of come up a lot. But it's not a matter of saying they're right or wrong. Values are what it is that you believe in, and so there's nothing really right or wrong about that. So, and there are some companies that look at their behaviors and you know what their values are. A good example of Enron. And greed was a super strong core value at Enron. Enron's gone. Mm-hmm. And there are other companies like that as well. So selecting the values so that you can make sure that your company has longevity can be important. But it's not to say that one value is more important than another. It comes from the people in the organization. And don't get me wrong, the final selection of the core values is up to the leadership. I mean, that's their job. But having gotten input from people throughout the company gives great credibility, and you get buy-in into the core values because people all had a chance to at least express their point of view about what's important.
So again, whenever you're looking at it, in our case, we're working with business-to-business partnerships or partnering with other organizations where it's really built on the ability to influence others into action, right? We don't own pieces of the other company. How can somebody go in, talk to folks, talk to leaders of another organization and get a sense of what their values, or in particular, what their core values are?
Let me back up on that particular question because it's a good one. You know the statistics as well or better than I that a lot of mergers and acquisitions don't work. A high percentage, and I've seen percentages anywhere from 50 to 80% of mergers and acquisitions somehow fall apart in the first few years. One of the reasons I believe is they don't look at the compatibility of the values and the culture. So if you have your core values, those values determine how you act in the organization, and that's your culture. You consider when you're going to partner with somebody whether or not there's a fit with the culture. Let's, for example, say, and again, I'll use the example of greed. If one company wants to partner with another company, and the other company is, honesty and fairness are their values, and the other one is, profitability and greed over everything, those are not compatible cultures. And in the second book that I wrote about this, by the way, I wrote about how it's called Values in Action. And the protagonist, the main person, the main character in the book was a managing director of a law firm. And in the book, he talks about how he turns down potential clients because their values are not compatible with the values of the law firm. And so you start to make decisions based on some of those what used to be called the soft criteria, but they're not. The values and corporate culture are the hard way to work. Because in other words, what I mean by that is you can have the best process in the world. You can have the smartest people in the world. You can have the greatest technology in the world. But if people don't do it because their values are inconsistent with what you want in your company, then you don't have a process, and you don't have an organization that runs harmoniously, for that matter. Using that word again. So it's about the compatibility on the soft stuff, if you will, which is really the hard stuff. Make sure, and you can do that formally. There are formal ways of evaluating, instruments and online, or you can just go in and talk to people and ask them about what it is they do, how they work every day, what they like about working there. And you can assess in many ways whether there's going to be compatibility on that dimension. I think that's one of the most important dimensions that you can possibly use. Do we fit with the other organization rather than do we have the best technology that we can marry with our technology? Those are important for sure, but it really is a matter of whether or not the people in the organization fit together and will work together in a compatible way.
Well, Ken, some of the comments that I heard you say earlier is, skills can be taught. Folks are really smart. They're really sharp. They can be taught skills, but your values are your values. Your beliefs are your beliefs. And it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get people to truly change what their beliefs are. And so, whenever you are evaluating a potential partner, you're evaluating a potential employee, you need to look at a lot of those aspects, but whatever you do not forget to look at their values, their beliefs, because people are driven by, people are what they believe, just like you said.
Yeah, and they act based upon those beliefs. If you're an honest person, and let's say I'm in the grocery store, and I use this example in my seminars. I'm in the grocery store standing behind somebody, and there's a guy there with a little 7 or 8 year old kid, and the grocery clerk gives the guy $20 too much change. And I said, well, what do you do? He said, well, I give the money back. And then the little boy goes, hey, Dad, why'd you give the money back to the lady? And I asked him, well, why'd you do that? And he said, what do you say to your little boy? And he said, well, it was not mine, and to keep it would have been wrong, and it would be dishonest, and it would be like stealing. So I'm watching this from behind behind them. I don't know the person. And I'm watching this little Kodak moment, or a little teaching moment with this kid. And then I asked the question when you're on the golf course that afternoon and you hit it in the rough, you kick it out without taking a penalty stroke? And I don't answer that question. I'm pointing out that your values go with you wherever you go. And if you're an honest person in the grocery store, you're likely to be an honest person on the golf course, and you're likely to be an honest person in your business. So your values go with you wherever you go. And that's part of the message that I try to get across to people. Now, can you change somebody's values? Well, people have options. And if you have a set of core values, and if you defined the expected behaviors based upon these core values, and you explain to people when they come into the company, this is the way we act around it. This is what we do based upon these values that we've defined in the following way. And you can ask them, how do you feel about that? Or you say, what do you love to do when you're not working? You can assess whether or not to their personal life, whether or not they have the same kind of values that fit into the organization. The important thing is, this is what's expected based upon the value, say, of fairness. So that when you come in and you're going to work in our, let's say our admin area, and somebody submits an expense report, and it goes over the limit on meals. And you call the person up and say, how come I went over the said, well, there was nowhere else to eat other than this one hotel where we were staying. And I ordered a salad, and it was about the least expensive thing on the menu, but it was still over what we're supposed to. And say, okay, the fairness doctrine comes in. That seems fair. So you would make an exception based upon the fairness. So even in accounting, administration, manufacturing, any area that you work in the company, what you want to do is define the expected behaviors based upon the values. Now, let me give you another example. Let's say someone's coming in and wants to work in your marketing department, and you're looking for a telemarketer. And somebody comes in and you say, well, right here under persistence, we expect one of the behaviors is we expect our telemarketers to make 50 cold calls a week. And the person goes, I hate making cold calls. Oh, well, then this might not be a good job for you. Somebody else comes in, he's got a headset on, he says, 50, I can do 100. When do I get started? He's got the right attitude toward that value. By the way, the right attitude toward that value. An attitude, positive attitude. Okay, that's one I'll tell you. I'm going to contradict myself for a moment. If there's one value that I would like to see every organization have, it would be pick based on a positive attitude. Because you can teach skills, but a positive attitude is something that is ingrained in people. And if you have somebody that comes in and these are the values that you have, and that person has a great attitude, then they can say, okay, I can adapt to that. And people can adapt. So you give them the opportunity to adapt to the values. When they go home, maybe they don't live them quite that well. But if you give people the opportunity to live the values because they're clearly articulated, then they can make a choice. I'm going to be fair in my dealings at work or not. And then they can either come into the organization and live those values, or you have to have a different kind of conversation. Yeah. So you can change the behavior. You might not be able to change the person's beliefs or attitudes, but you can change behaviors. Give people the opportunity to act the way you want people to act in the company, and then they get a choice. They can do it or not.
Ken, I want to throw a question at you that I hear periodically, and I have my own humble opinion about it, but I want to ask you. So there's kind of this leadership philosophy of having diversity of thoughts, diversity of opinion, diversity of these components, because it makes us all stronger. Whenever it comes to values and core values, how does this diversity of opinion, diversity of thoughts, how does that wrestle in with being aligned with values? How do they play together, or do they?
Perhaps one of those values in that organization would be open communication or open-mindedness. And say, yeah, we value a diversity of opinion here. That could be the definition. And that's what we mean by open-mindedness. We expect behavior. We expect people to come into meetings with diverse points of view. And we expect people to challenge the status quo. We expect people to ask questions. Those are behaviors. So if you come to a meeting and nobody ever asks any questions, then they're not living the value of open-mindedness. So you can judge people's performance based upon whether they're living those values that have been articulated as specific behaviors. And let's say Billy Bob he never asks questions. He never really contributes in meetings. And so when you're having a performance review, you're going through your values and the behaviors you expect. Billy Bob, I've noted that you've really been very quiet. Now, I know some people are more energetic and like to, open up, but you got some great ideas. And I'm with you one-to-one. You've got the greatest ideas in the whole company, but you don't express them in the meetings, and other people lose out on your insights. So I would really like you to take this seriously and change your behavior a bit. I want you to, next meeting we have, our next regular meeting on Monday, I want you to just bring 2 questions. And I want you to ask 2 questions. So you can shape a person's behavior, rewarding them for the appropriate behavior. So if Billy Bob comes in and has a question, a good question, hey, Billy Bob, thanks for that. That's really a great question. Rewarding somebody publicly, giving feedback in private. The behavior that was not acceptable was being quiet in meetings. So I didn't point and say, hey, Billy Bob, why don't you say anything today? No, you wait for a private conversation to give corrective feedback. But in a public, say, hey, Billy Bob, great question. Thanks for that. What do you think, John? Do you agree? You can carry the conversation on from there. So you look at what's expected in terms of behavior based upon the core values of the company. And in this case, we've been talking about open communication.
Awesome. So Ken, you alluded to this next question a little bit, but I want to pull it out and make it very explicit. What would you say to an executive that says, those softer sides of the values and culture, yeah, it's important, but it doesn't really make a big difference in the bottom line. You can't really quantify it doesn't change profitability to companies. What would you say to that?
Wrong. I guess I'd say, let's think about it this way. If you have a harmonious atmosphere where people are committed to a set of core values and behaviors, they're all, again, pulling the oars in the boat and going in the same direction, and you're focused on the company goals, and you're focused on the mission and vision of the organization, and everybody's working toward that, what would happen? Well, people would get along better within the organization. So employee satisfaction would go up. That's a metric. If you deal with your customers in a way that is consistent with these core values, customer satisfaction goes up. Another metric. If people are getting along harmoniously, then productivity goes up. And if you select people who come and stay in the organization and you don't have turnover, you save those costs. And oh, by the way, how expensive is it to turn somebody over in your company? And the answer is always the same: a lot. Well, the Bureau of Labor Statistics tells us it takes 2 to 7 times the annual salary to turn somebody over. Yeah, when you consider job being empty, other people filling in and their productivity goes down in their area, all the costs for recruiting, et cetera, et cetera. So if you've got a $50,000, $60,000 a year person, it may cost you a couple $100,000 in real costs to turn that person over. Now, if you didn't have to turn that person over because the person is really working well, they like it there, you selected them because they fit in, they're compatible with the organization, you don't have to spend that money. Where does that money go? Back into the company, right to the bottom line. So I give examples like that when people ask, say, for example, the soft stuff. No, soft stuff's the hard stuff. If you don't get people to behave in a way that's consistent with what you want in your company, then you're going to have real problems. And if you get them to in a compatible way, harmonious way to get along, you're going to have a well-run machine.
That's awesome. Ken, one last question for you before we part. I want to ask you to talk to your 25-year-old self. If you could talk to your 25-year-old self, what kind of advice would you give him as he was starting into his career?
Couple things. One, and this shouldn't surprise you, is follow your passion. I was thinking about that just yesterday. I was watching a news show, I believe. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. But it was about somebody, I know what it was. It was a little kid who had saved some people from a fire. And it was all about, I did it because I had to do it. It was the right thing to do, and I was following my passion. I mean, little kids said that. So the first one is, do what you love to do. Follow your passion. The money will come later. I talked to a person who I spoke with his group of CEOs the other day, and he was very successful as the chairman of this group. And he said, well, my career started kind of in a funny way. He said, I love to ski. So I was a ski bum for 10 years. And then from there, he went into business that was involved in the recreation, et cetera. So his career took off because he followed his passions. That's number one, follow your passion. Second thing is, be sure that you understand who you are. And that would be to look at your own core values and spend time with people who have compatible points of view, especially in business. And David Belden's article that I just told you about, he said that you are a conglomerate of the 10 people you spend most of your time with. And I know that's true. I heard the phrase many years ago, be aware of who you spend your time with because you will become like them. So know who you are and be sure you spend time with people that you admire and have the same people who have the same set of values that you have. So, and then build the skills you need to do what you want to do. So the skill set comes third. The passion and the values, I think, come first. And it's true for companies as well as individuals, 25-year-olds or not.
Yeah, awesome. Ken, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your insights. Continued success to you, and look forward to keeping in touch with you.
Absolutely. Great to be with you, and your program sounds terrific. If this has been in any way helpful, I'm delighted.
Awesome. Thanks, Ken.
Take care.